Tournament ready. It's a phrase that gets thrown around every once in a while, sometimes from guys who are deep in the weeds of a game, often from players who have yet to enter their first tournament. The issue is that not only is the idea of being tournament ready, that is achieving a certain level of skill that you perceive appropriate for a tournament, not good for individual players, it's also bad for the games as an ecosystem. In August, I'm going to a Lethal League Blaze tournament, MAC 2 in Bristol, and by my own frame of reference, I would say I'm not tournament ready. I haven't played the game for over 2 years, and the game has a dedicated set of players who will be significantly above my skill level. Between then and now, I might be able to get to a point of tournament ready, however I've still signed up because A, Bristol is somehow the living fantasy of if England wasn't a shithole, and B, because by me having signed up, I have reduced the barrier of being tournament ready for other players. Also, there is Melee if you were curious. The sign up link in description. What's tricky about the ready mindset is that it doesn't come from any particular structure of fighting games themselves. Players come from the outside with an expectation of what tournament level play looks like, with a soft anxiety of that expectation combined with the unknown that creates a mythical stage of preparation that needs to be achieved to compete. It's fair to say that on a literal level, this stage of preparation doesn't exist. Start.gg doesn't create a combo capture before you enter a tournament to prove that you're ready, so in some sense the best time to start entering tournaments is now. While it's all well and good to say that though, to some extent players should go in with some preparation. It doesn't have to be intensive, but the players should be familiar enough with the game to have a decent time, and what familiar enough is constantly shifting. Let's say it's week 1 of a new fighting game. Almost everyone would agree that this is the best time to get into a game, since getting the most out of your time comes from when you have players around your skill level to play against. Since the quantity of players is so high, there's naturally a high range of skill levels in play, with most being uninformed dabblers. There's going to be some players who are more familiar with the genre, and maybe some players who are able to transfer their skills more specifically from one game to the next. Marvel players are more likely to pick up a new tag fighter and be of a better quality than someone who has only ever played Street Fighter, since they're more exposed to cover me concepts. This is the time that you need to be the least prepared to enter a tournament. You could literally find a couple of characters that you like and go from there. Maybe like 3 hours of work. Base levels of knowledge are low, so everyone will be learning in unison, making it unlikely that you're going to get blasted so hard that it feels like you never had a chance. On the other hand, take a game like Guilty Gear Xrd. I know. Something that's long established where the average player has a high amount of legacy knowledge. The player base is also smaller, so there's less skill distribution at the lower levels. For as much as I love Xrd, this player spread creates a tournament environment where you'll probably need quite a bit of prep time to have a good time. Even your O2 here would likely dominate players still in the double-digit hours of play, not to mention that the player base is smaller, so the skill level of the player base is spread much tighter. The reality is that while there's no level of play that blocks players from entering tournaments, there is a level of play that will suit them to make the experience enjoyable. As a game goes on in age, the level of play will increase, making for more experience required for any player to be tournament ready, in theory. Games do tend to follow this trend, however, what really creates that gap is the range in skill levels. Let's say you have 200 average weekly players for a game and the skill level spread looks something like this. While you have a few players who are extremely good at the game, the majority of the players are people who have put some time into the game but aren't hard grinders. They like their character and have 1 or 2 niche facts that they can pull out about the game. There's also a decent amount of people who dabble here and there without putting much time in at all. They might just so happen to boot up the game that week and then not play it again for a month. Maybe they exclusively play with their friends. Now let's assume that outside of the top 10%, 90% of the player base doesn't consider themselves tournament ready, making for a 20-man tournament. The curve on the average skill level would push it much closer to the most distant part of the graph. Even though your average skill level isn't that high when taking all players into account, the gap creates an environment where a large portion of players probably aren't ready for tournament play. That said, if you're just outside of this average range, you realistically are ready to play in tournaments. You're on the lower end of the skill level, but good enough that you'll feel like you had a fighting chance and probably learned 1 or 2 things along the way. Hell, given the right matchup and a little bit of luck, you might even end up going 1-2. As this player enters though, they bring down the average skill level for the tournament. As an individual, their impact is small, but if a large enough group of people enter, the threshold to have a good time can open up significantly. The effect is that as more and more people consider themselves tournament ready, the more people are actually tournament ready. The inverse is also true. The more people assume themselves to not be tournament ready, the higher the average skill level gets, making the amount of people getting an experience they value smaller. It's an unfortunate part of fighting game momentum, where positive momentum can open up a game over time, but negative experiences, or even just prolonged periods of stagnation, which are more likely, increases the gap between where a player is likely to enter a tournament, or even if they enter in the first place. Some of you thinking that positive momentum kind of doesn't exist in fighting games, and to that I would rebut with Melee and also Tekken 7. Melee was a game that I got into 10 years ago because of the positive momentum, and Tekken was a game that I was already playing when I saw the positive momentum come around with Arslan Ash and Lil Margin. You can have the tournament skill level decrease with positive momentum, it's just very rare that it happens deeper into a game's life cycle. What's particularly frustrating from a community perspective is that there's not a huge amount that can be done to remove this perception of tournament readiness without adding work somewhere else, and it's impossible to remove entirely. TOs can create beginner exclusive tournaments, which does help, but adds to the amount of work that has to be done running an entirely new event. This also might exclude some players in the middle of the tournament experience, where they feel too well versed in a game to enter beginner events, but not well versed enough to enter the more conventional events, despite the fact that if they're in this middle part, they definitely are. Things that improve the tournament experience for beginners and intermediaries, such as round-robin pools that guarantee at least 4 games played, or amateur brackets that allow the bottom half of the event to play more, come with their own logistic issues for TOs to solve, and also only improve the experience for players who have already decided themselves tournament ready, or decided to attend despite not feeling prepared. Accessible resources for beginners absolutely helps, however can't quite remove this feeling in its entirety. Paradoxically, the only way to remove that feeling of not being tournament ready is to enter a tournament with that feeling still intact, though it doesn't completely overcome the issue. That said, there are some ways that I find helped me to remove the prominence of that feeling. Offline tournaments tend to be a lot less intimidating to me. With an online event, the only real point of entertainment is playing the match itself. With an offline event, at least I'm in a new city or a place and can go and meet people face to face. If I'm having a really bad time, I can just pivot and go and do something else, and I personally find that tournaments are a decent excuse to travel. It's why I'm willing to go to MAC 2 despite not feeling that prepared. I'm sure I'll meet some new people and go to an overly expensive coffee shop to get a latte on the same level of Greg's, for that is the price of England not being a shithole. I'm also more drawn to events that market themselves as majors, attempting to draw in as many people as possible over entering online weeklies, the small monthly, that kind of thing. That's not to say that online weeklies aren't appreciated, I'm just not really drawn to them and find that I'm more anxious for them than a major. Though what type of event you're drawn to and feel more comfortable at is, you guessed it, mostly something you need to find out for yourself, which is really this feeling just in a different vector. You can always try to get a mate involved too. Treat the event like it's a reason to go to a new place, and if you like it, you can hang out for a little bit longer. And if you don't, you and your mate can go and find a Greg's and wonder why you're so familiar with the flavor. I should also point out, by entering a tournament, you'll get to the point that you think you need to be at faster than if you just played ranked until your PNG changed color. Playing a more isolated set of games with consequences makes you focus more on that game in a different way. You probably won't play better, but you will be more aware of what could have gone better and what needs improving. You can also talk to your opponent after and have an actual conversation about what just occurred, instead of a conversation with the loading screen about why your opponent's a fucking moron. When it comes to the idea of being tournament ready, the issues end up layering on top of each other. Players don't need to be of a certain skill level to enter, but probably need to have achieved a certain skill level to play and enjoy themselves, while also not being able to know if they're at that skill level without having entered. As players deem themselves outside of this bracket, the skill level required to have a good time raises, and the best solution to this is to have players enter under the average skill level to reduce the overall average. The upside to this is that if enough people simultaneously decide to enter a tournament before they're tournament ready, they might find they're actually extremely tournament ready, and have a surprisingly good time. That's what I'm hoping will occur with Mach 2. Lethal League can be a difficult game, but it starts out simple and gets more complicated as time goes on, which is plenty enough reason to give it a shot, and let's be honest, you probably already own it. Sign up link in the description, and give that tournament that you saw but didn't sign up to another once over in your mind. I'm not saying that you're going to make it to winners finals, and I mean, let's be real, you're probably going to go 0-2, but you're probably more ready than you think you are.